adults maybe with us and a little older, all together. It's just great to be together. And we have some beautiful things that we do this afternoon before we let you go. But first things first, let's go ahead and distribute the Bibles. Anyone need a Bible? And we'd love to just make one available to you there and keep it as a gift from IEC. And then while Eddie is distributing those, and anyone here for the first time would like to introduce to you, Jesse, I don't know, Dave, Sandy, if you want to just give a wave, say anything, welcome.
Hi.
Beautiful.
We're David and Sandy Francis.
Okay.
We just arrived Thursday night, so
Wow.
we're new to the area.
So, yeah, he's working here.
Okay, great. Friends of Jane and Jesse, so hopefully there'll be a chance to get to meet our friends. And our brother here, yes, greetings, yes. Name,
Brother?
brother.
Ladies first, he says.
Ladies first, okay.
My name is Sanon Kim. I live in this city, Jinju.
Okay,
My job is Oriental Med.
okay, wonderful. Welcome very much. Great to have you with us and our friends. Again, it's good to see everybody. Okay.
I'm one of the young people.
Thank you, yes. Greg just,
He's 25 years old.
yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Yes, been with IEC as a founding member and then has been reassigned back. We're so glad to have Mr. Moore. It's great. Amen. Wow, great. Okay, very good then. We have our Bibles. One last thing, let's just wave to the person beside us, shall we? Over on that side, over on that side. Maybe behind you, somebody in front of you, and give them the signal like in the flag when you do this. Okay. Love you. Great to be together. Okay. Okay. This is our message today from our next verses from John chapter 9. Those of you who've been following with us, and really fantastic book in the Bible, the book of John. Those of you that have a special love for the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but John just has a special emphasis that he seems to be bringing. So we look at chapter 9 today, really the last verse of chapter 8 to introduce us. That's our theme that we'll be looking at. Our next slide, Lance, will show us. Let's read the theme together if you see it there on the right side. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I'm in the world, though, I am the light of the world. So that's kind of our theme. We'll look at that during the day. And there's our verses, especially John 9, 1 through 12. But the last verse of John 8 is verse 59. If you have it right there, I'll start. Read aloud with me if you'd like to. And then we'll carry on to 1 through 12 of chapter 9. And this says in verse 59 of chapter 8, At this they picked up stones to stone him, but Jesus hid himself, slipping away from the temple grounds. He had said there earlier in verse 58, I'll just read it, Jesus answered, Before Abraham was born, I am. Okay, now verse 1. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus. But this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. After saying this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, wash it in the pool of Siloam. This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was. Others said, no, he only looks like him. But he himself has existed. I am the man. How then were your eyes opened? They asked. He replied, the man they called Jesus made some mud, put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see. Where is this man? They asked him. I don't know. You could hear him saying, I have no idea where he is. I'm just so glad I'm no longer blind. I can see. So let's bow for final prayer as we go into the message here. Father, as our custom, as is our custom, we present ourselves one last time. May our focus be so straight with you. May our attention span not wander. May we be blessed with the brief time that we give to these verses now. Oh God, let this seep into us. You, your living word, your light into our souls. And we thank you for it. We thank you for our salvation. We thank you for your empowerment into our lives. Bring about miracles, if you would, Lord. Oh God, do things in people's hearts who might be crying out to you. Bless now, we pray. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. Amen. The speaker and the listener, we pray. So, a few takeaway points we'd like to read with you, and there are about a few of them on the inside of the bulletin, if you see printed there. Number one, the disciples regarded the man born blind as a point for a big theological question. As you just read, why is he blind? Jesus didn't even really answer them. He regarded the blind man as a suffering person needing relief. Number two, Jesus said, I'm not here to answer such questions, but to do the work of God in alleviating such suffering while I can. Number three, if we neglect our opportunities for service, they may be lost forever. And number four, Jesus often varied his methods of healing so they could never be formalized. We'll see a little bit about that. Very, very interesting, and kind of carry these thoughts now in the next few moments. And then in the bulletin, if you want, take your bulletin home and look at it and study some of these points. Very, very interesting. This incredibly key chapter in the Bible. We concluded last week with the conversation of Jesus that ended with the statement, which we read, verse 58 and 59, before Abraham was born, I am. Now, it's been brought out by many people, that's just not good grammar. You just don't talk like that. Before Abraham was, it should say, I was. I was then. But to say I am is giving them a clue about his divinity and his deity. At this, they picked up stones to stone Jesus. But he slipped away from the temple grounds. Maybe he knew a little secret passageway, and it just wasn't his time to be crucified or to be killed. The Pharisees did want to kill him, though, because this is the continual thing. Isn't it interesting that the same stones that they picked up last week to throw at the woman caught in the act of adultery are probably the same stones that they're now holding when they want to kill the Lord Jesus. It's amazing how this drama is before us in the Bible. The Bible's such an exciting book. I think it's better than Gunsmoke or Star Wars. That's just my opinion. We just can't get enough of this story. The drama is incredible. So this chapter, chapter 9, presents the sixth sign since chapter 1 performed by Jesus in Jerusalem and in the other parts towards Galilee. The healing of the man born blind is this sixth sign. Jesus announced that he was the light of the world, but to many, the minute he arrives, we ask, why is this? It seems that the light goes out. Why? According to the scriptures, we're not to reject this gift of sight. And if we do reject it, then we enter into consequences. blindness seems to come to the ones in the Bible who reject the light. Let's read about it. 1 Peter chapter 2 gives an amazing statement, hearkening to this. Peter referring to this in his epistles, chapter 2. Let's read it out loud. Welcome the living stone as the source of light. The workmen took one look at it and they threw it out. God set it in the place of honor, but they turned their eyes away. Present yourselves as living stones for the construction of a sanctuary full of light, in which you will serve as holy priests. But we need Jesus Christ. We need the cornerstone. We need everything from His Word, or the building will not work, and architecturally it will not be sound. So that's why all the time we have this constant reference of lifting Jesus Christ up. And so with Jesus there are two categories. Those who believe in Him for salvation, they receive eternal life. And that's category one. Those who reject Him seem to enter into a hardened heart of unbelief. And they will face eventually eternal punishment. Matthew 25 says this in verse 46. Some believe there's an undecided category. What do you think? God is patient. In the meantime, there's a message here in chapter 9 for all of us. Let us be perceptive and be very careful as we listen to the claims of Jesus Christ. We do not know how long our life is. Yes, God gives patience in that so-called third category. He is working on us. But today is the day of salvation. Call upon Him before we leave today. Make it certain. The healing here in chapter 9 is kind of a description as a real-life illustration of the claim Jesus made in chapter 8, the chapter we've studied a couple of weeks back, when Jesus said the same thing, I'm the light of the world. The blind man's healing is a concrete example we're going to see today of the victory of Jesus over darkness. He said, I'm the light, and He proved it true. The light versus darkness wording about Jesus was introduced back in chapter 1. That's all the time. John's been bringing this up. We saw it also in John chapter 3. Let's look at that one verse in chapter 1. There it is. Let's read together. In Him was life, and that light was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome, meaning cannot overcome the light. Also, our chapter 3 we read several weeks back. Also, let's read this one together. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light, because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light, and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light. So Jesus is speaking as the Pharisees are around, the common people around. Many, many truths are being brought to them. So I'd like to just bring up a few points here, this brief preview of the next chapter, chapter 10. And we're seeing in chapter 9 an introduction to the teaching about the Good Shepherd, which is coming next chapter. And just as a little preview, this sharp contrast is made between the Good Shepherd with the light for the sheep, who gives His life for the sheep, versus the religious leaders who are standing here, and they're the ones who will never give their life for the sheep. They're thieves, they're hirelings, and they abandon the flock when danger threatens. So these beautiful miracles, Jesus showing everything He can. And a word about miracles, by the way. Many Christian authors associate each miracle with a specific teaching that reflects the message of that particular miracle. It describes two main categories of miracles in the attribute to Jesus. Those that affected people, such as our blind man today, in John 9, which were called healings. Second, those that controlled nature. So two kinds of miracles that we've been witnessing, such as when Jesus walked on the water. Many categorize these three types of healings as being cures, and then exorcisms, and then the resurrection of the dead, the last great miracle of Jesus Christ. So the others were the one dropsy, withered hand, deaf, mute, and the healing of Malchus here. Anyone remember who Malchus is? He's the one in Gethsemane. Peter sliced his ear off, and Jesus did a miracle and healed Malchus' ear out of his heart for him. He didn't have to do that. So all these miracles, the number one thing that Jesus has healed is eyes, healing of the blind, and there's a reason for that. The others are all part of it, and it's amazing. Withered hand, whatever it might have been. It seems that randomly Jesus knew, and that's what he did, directed by his Father. So here in this amazing chapter 9, telling about this unique way of putting the spittle on the eye. Many times people have asked, what was that all about? You know, that's never happened before. And in fact, that's really true. It's a completely unique way of performing a miracle like no other miracle in the entire scriptures that we see here in John 9. And from Genesis to this book of John, no prophet, no priest, or no apostle ever gave sight to the blind. But Jesus did, many times. Only once like this, though, with the spittle in the mud. The reason is because the Lord said to Moses in Exodus chapter 4, and this is, all the Jews would know this as a reference from Exodus, the great times of Moses. And you want to read this with me. Who gave human beings their mouths? Next. Who makes them deaf or mute? Next. Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I'll help you speak, and we'll tell you what to say. That was to Moses. There's a prophecy in the Old Testament, also in Psalm 146, that when the Messiah comes, the one main reason we will know him is he will give sight to the blind. And that's what Jesus is doing. It says in Psalm 146, let's read together, shall we? The Lord gives sight to the blind. The Lord lifts up those who are bowed down. The Lord loves the righteous. The Lord watches over the foreigner, and it goes on to say, and sustains the fatherless and the widow, but he frustrates the ways of the wicked. Once again, giving sight to the blind is considered to be a messianic activity. In the opening verse of John 9, verse 1, this is what it says. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. First, Jesus saw. Friends, we don't know what drew him to this man. But I guarantee you, Jesus was drawn to this sightless man because through Father's sovereign plan, he heard his heart's cry. I wish I could see. I've heard about the 7 colors of the rainbow. I wish I could see them. Those friends of mine that tell me about it, oh, after the thunderstorm, there's the rainbow coming out. I wish I could see the rainbow. I wonder if he knew Jesus was looking at him. For a moment, this particular phrase, born from birth, the next part. It means from the hour of birth, from the very minute he was born, he was blind. Why is that interesting? Why is that important? Because this particular wording suggests that this man is a representative of all of us. The fact that mankind is not by nature receptive to the light with God. The minute we're born, we turn off the light. Nobody has to teach a baby how to lie. It's saying all mankind is spiritually blind from birth. It is Jesus' role as the light to enlighten every man. And that's just what he's going to do. The disciples get involved, though. In verse 2 of chapter 9, they ask, oh, Rabbi, theologically, who sinned first, him or his parents? So just for a minute, imagine our blind man, our friend. He's sensing Jesus. Maybe he hears that the crowd, and then somehow he senses he's coming over to him, sitting on the side of the road. He hasn't even called out. Like the other portion in Matthew said, Son of David, I hear you're walking by, come over to me. There's no, in John chapter 9, no reference that the blind man said a thing. Maybe he could sense that when Jesus stood in front of him and knelt down, that the hotness of the noon sun was blocked in a shadow. Something's happened. His heart's cry is being answered. Maybe he brought a vessel of water, Jesus did, and gave him a little cup of water. We don't know. Seems likely, knowing Jesus. Suddenly the disciples are all talking about sin, though. They're evaluating him, judging him. Why is he blind? And they're curious, and they assume that Jesus wants to blow everybody away with some big theological statement. And that's not what Jesus has in mind at all. Let's remember that. We can forgive the disciples. Those guys, we love them. It's a very big time for them. Did you know that it was a common belief in Judaism that sin was the cause of anything bad? So if you had blindness, that just means that was sin. That's all they knew. That's what they were taught. The rabbis used to teach this from Ezekiel. It's Ezekiel 18. It's a verse that says that there is no death unless there was sin first. So they're just used to thinking this way. Psalm 89 is another chapter in the Old Testament. The rabbis would teach that if you're guilty, then anything punishment, then that's why you're getting punished, because you were guilty. So the two go together. It's a way of interpreting these Old Testament verses, the ancient rabbis and their special writings, and the Mishnah and the Talmud. Of course, there could be two ways to answer this relating to the blind man's story. The sin could have been part of the man or the man's parents. But really, that wasn't the issue. According to this ancient tradition, you know that you could sin when you were in your mother's fetus, as a fetus in your mother's womb. According to the Midrash, one commentary gave us that it states that when a pregnant woman worships in a heathen temple, then her fetus is also committing idolatry. So that's what they're used to. They're wondering, did it come from him or come from his mother? Who knows? But of course, the beautiful thing in John 9, verse 3, if you're following along, notice it says, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened for a much bigger reason. And it's that God might be displayed. You're getting all messed up in the wrong direction. We can't help but take notice of Jesus' kindness. All eyes are fixed on him. Even before he heals the blind man, he lovingly looks at his disciples. You ever, you're looking at them like, guys, you're missing the whole point here. It's almost kind of humorous what's going on. They're more blind than the blind man. Oh, so they just weren't getting it. They were with Jesus, the blind disciples, healing the blind man. And so they were trying to impress Jesus, acting very spiritual. And so we forget them. We can see we would probably be doing this. I'd probably be doing the same thing. Jesus kept on the point, though. He simply raised the issue to a much higher level. This man's birth and blindness did not take place outside of the control of God nor the purpose of God. What is the ministry of Christ all about? Not self-righteousness. but touching us where we're at. Not debating theology, but we certainly talk about that. We do that, but it's about like when he met Nathanael under the fig tree. Remember that in chapter 1? And Nathanael was studying the scriptures, and Jesus said, "You're going to see great things." He just touched him. He didn't say, "What verse are you studying? Have you memorized it yet?" That's not what it was about. Or transforming us, like the couple getting married who had no money, and he turned the water into wine so they could have a festive family occasion at the wedding. No money involved. Touching us. What's the ministry of Christ all about? It's about giving us a new start, like Jesus gave to Nicodemus and said, "You must be born again, Nicodemus." It's about meeting us like he met the Samaritan woman at the well in the heat of the day. What's the ministry of Christ all about? It's about giving us his healing touch, like how he touched the lame man at the pool of Bethesda. And it's about feeding hungry families like he did to the 5,000 or 25,000, some scholars say, on their way to Jerusalem in chapter 6. What's the ministry, one more question, all about of Christ? It's about him meeting us in the story out of the deep places of the world, like he did the tired and very afraid disciples out on the Sea of Galilee. He walked right on the water to them. That's how important they were to him. And of course, it's about forgiving us, like he did the woman caught in the very act of adultery. Jesus' ministry is not about proving which disciples are more worthy or more righteous in comparison to each other. We look at each other and just say, "My brother, my sister." We don't think about that. It's about loving each other, accepting each other without compromise to the scriptures, of course. And Jesus has just said this man's blindness is all about a chance for God to manifest his works. By the way, did you know even the Pharisees later on in chapter 9, if you read ahead, verse 16 and verse 31, they even said nobody could do this unless it was God. Even the Pharisees were getting dumbfounded. They can't believe that this man's eyesight has been restored. It's an impossibility. In our next verse, verse 4, Jesus gave us a powerful view into the future. Grammatically, in the Greek, Jesus uses the strongest phrase possible. We must. What must we do? What does it mean to be told you must do something that's a divine necessity? Here's what it literally means. It is still day, but it will soon be dark. And while it's day, we must work the works of God that they might be displayed. Jesus was saying, as my disciples, are you being awakened to the responsibility you have from now on during the rest of your life? What about us here this afternoon? Are we as disciples, those that feel led that they are you comfortable with the built-in requirements of waiting with Jesus Christ? Did you ever say something like, "Hey, what have I got myself into here?" when you started following Jesus Christ and he said, "You must do something for me." And Paul made no bones about it when he wrote his letter. Remember in Romans 1:14? Let's read it together. "I am obligated to Greeks and non-Greeks, both to the wise and the foolish. What is why I am so eager to preach the gospel also to you Romans." Wait a minute here. Just going to give this little meditation I had when I was typing this out. Wait a minute. Are you saying, Lord, that I have an obligation? You know, I'm just a simple guy who comes to church for an hour, and then I want to go to the Connection Cafe and get some good food. Then I want to talk to a few people, and then I'm out of here. Now you're telling me to notice the contrast between day and night, and light and darkness? What's that all about? What do these sayings really mean? View this identification of Jesus Christ as the light of the world, and the night involves the departure of Jesus from the world. The departure is drawing near, friends. You will not have the light with you always. I am going to a place where some of you cannot follow. You will not have this light. It's the living, glorious gospel that we have, and while we have it, let's make use of it. It is day now. It will not be day always, whatever that may mean to each one of us. Let's carry our Bible publicly. If you, from here to the car, whatever. Let's give out a tract. We have some little booklets back there, and give them out. Let's let the world remember that church isn't just a building, but it's about living, vibrant, organic people exalting Jesus Christ with their lips and with their actions. Verse 5 says, while I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. First, just try to think what must have been going on in that blind man.